Welcome to the Attack Action Podcast,
where we talk about friendship, fun times, and most importantly, flesh and blood. Here are your hosts, Taylor and Isaac.
Hello, Attactioneers. It's me, Taylor, your co-host, here as always with my favorite co-host, Isaac. What's up, dude?
It is I, Isaac. We've had a whirlwind of a weekend and, had a lot of big developments in our podcasting empire development. We are joined today by our co-host, Colin. What's up, Colin?
What up, guys? We're in my house.
That's 100% correct. So we're in beautiful Highland Park, Los Angeles, with Colin and his dog, Birdie, who you might be able to hear in the background. But, of course, it wouldn't be one of our fabled productions without dog noise in the background. So you all have that to look forward to. Make sure you turn it up nice and loud in your commute so you can hear her chomping her bones in the background.
One of the main reasons I got a dog was so I could be included in that tradition.
Part of our podcast requirement.
Yeah.
We've been having a great time in the LA weather. Just like Colin barbecuing feasts for us on the patio and having some good in-person friendship time.
Yep.
Mostly hang out online, so this has been great.
Yeah, lots of games too.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed. So if the listeners don't know, we have been in Los Angeles as part of the casting team for the first major event in California, on the West Coast, actually. There was a Battle Hardened in Pasadena that me, Isaac, Colin, and shout out to our casting buddy Blake got to participate for the live stream.
Sheesh.
And then there was a Road to Nats the next day, which me and Isaac played in. So we're gonna get to talk to y'all about our whole weekend experience and the metagame breakdowns and just all of the stories that came up from this weekend. So buckle up, Buttercup.
But first, the news. Well, the first thing on the docket is Worlds has been announced. It will be taking place in San Jose, California at the beginning of November of this year.
Whoop, whoop.
Which is just great news for us that live in California.
Yeah, it's going to be nice that there's a major event so close to our house. I mean, so close to our house is like 5 hours away. So that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, you might still beat us there just by flying.
Or it's the same amount of time. I don't know. Yeah. Pretty giant state. So that's pretty huge. What else we got?
Nationals has been announced. U.S. Nationals will be taking place at the end of September in North Carolina. This has sparked a bit of debate and some complaints because Nationals was announced, about 2 months before taking place, which has definitely caused some conflict for some people, or most people. I don't know. For a lot of people, it's hard to take time off, 2 months or less than 2 months away, especially like a good chunk of time off of work. So I know that that's caused a bit of an uproar out there. How do you guys feel about that?
I totally understand. I think there is a bit of an issue currently with the timing of events, when they're announced, when they're occurring, and also how many there are. There's just so many events right now. I think everybody's feeling a bit of fatigue just because we love the game so much. We want to play in all of them, but the time and energy that requires, the travel, it all builds up, and it can be kind of rough.
Yeah, Colin, we were talking about this earlier in the weekend about how there are all these different types of events. Like we have armories, we have skirmishes, we have road to nats, we have pro quests, we have now battle hardens, we have callings, etc. That are all according to the graphic from Legend Story Studios is supposed to be different levels of competitiveness, and that's not so much the case. Like definitely some people care less about certain events than others, but in terms of events available for a certain type of player, there is no difference because the community is so small that everybody goes to every event, right? Like we play in blitz events, we play in battle hardens, we play in road to nats, we go to callings. Like they're all the same people. It's not like the calling is for somebody else compared to, you know, a road to nationals. Those are the same people going to all of them. So when you have so many of them in a year so close together and announced with not enough lead time, and you're very passionate about the game, it's really hard to be able to schedule, find time, and then also feel like you're staying connected to the community when you happen to be one of those people who's busy that weekend and you don't get to participate, because it's like everybody is participating. Like at least that's how I felt for New Jersey. Like I could not make that happen, but it was like basically everybody was there either at the calling or at the pro tour. And you know, in especially when you miss out on the XP or the elo or whatever other thing is that you need to qualify, where other people who have that flexibility in their schedule get to, which is maybe just the nature of like the game, right? And being a regular person with a regular job is maybe like, you know, why I'll never be national champ or something like that, you know? So I don't know.
Yeah, well, I would argue there's definitely a competitive difference between like Armory and Battle Hardened. Um, but I understand that that varies for a lot of people because some armories are quite competitive, especially if their local high level players bring that competitive spirit to Armory. So I think that that is definitely a complaint at some local scenes. Yeah, and for me, I've just had to, because I think for a lot of people it adds quite a lot of stress to the situation because things are announced, you know, at the last minute and they're coming up soon. So then people have to like scramble to get off work and try to make it, and it just makes the whole thing, you know, like you said, you don't want to miss out, but then it becomes really stressful, and you have to like maybe sacrifice other things in your life to try to make it happen and all that. So for me, I've definitely had to kind of step back and like prioritize which events I want to go to. You know, like I decided I was not going to New Jersey, even though, yeah, it sucked to miss out. But because we were looking at, you know, worlds, maybe nationals, maybe, you know, it's just like there's so many events in the year that I've definitely been doing better for myself personally to like not try to make every season of everything. And, you know, that sucks. I would rather play in every season, but it's just like unrealistic. So what I would hope is that in the future, like maybe next year, they'll have everything scheduled out a bit better. So then you can look at like, okay, there's 4 callings around the country in the 4 different quarters. There's, you know, 2 pro tours, one closer, one further. There's a nationals and there's a worlds, you know, and you can like have that kind of outlined and then pick what you want to do versus thinking like, oh, well, this calling is doable for me. I need to scramble and do it because I don't know if I'll be able to do the next one or when it is
Right.
or what, you know, all that. So
Yeah.
I think that that's, you know, just what we would look for in the coming year.
Yeah, being able to prioritize which ones you want to go to rather than reacting to every bit of news, I think is the key there. Because then you don't know the full picture and you decide real quickly to go to one thing and then something else comes up and you're like, man, I really kind of wish I went to that instead, but I didn't know it was even happening. So, and I know that's hard. It's a lot of dealing with a lot of different vendors and organizations to schedule all these things. But, you know, hopefully we're moving towards longer lead times on those announcements, which it seems like these upcoming Battle Hardens that were also announced, we've gotten more of a heads up than we usually get.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's just hard because they're all smashed in here at the end of the year, and we have Leal, Nationals, and Worlds all coming up, right? So it makes it really hard, I think, to really, I guess the Battle Hardens are for kind of the greater metropolitan area, right? That's there. So maybe everybody shows up to the Battle Hardened who's in that city or a few hours outside of that city or something like that. So, um, I just, yeah, I don't know. They really need to change something so it makes it way easier to participate in their game rather than feel like I'm always having to play catch up and getting stressed out about it and maybe burnt out about it. But I also sometimes equate that to me and Isaac's particular situation where it's a minimum 5-hour drive to get to any event that's not an armory or a skirmish. So that maybe adds to it a little bit for us.
Sure.
I think as there are more events too, and as the game gets older, people's competitive desires will be scratched a bit, so maybe you don't have to make every battle hardened that you could, or, as things even out, people's, fiending for competitive events might wane a little bit.
Totally.
Indeed. Continue on, good sir.
Speaking of battle hardens, last bit of news, there have been a number of battle hardens announced. Go check it out to see if there's one near you and you would like to attend.
Nailed it.
All right, we got some shout outs here.
Justin Lewag and Arcane Games and Events for putting on an amazing weekend of events, being Battle Hardened and Road to Nats in Pasadena over the weekend. It was just a premier level event, great venue, really well organized, and we all had a blast there. Everybody I talked to had a really good time. Some small feedback, but they're a new company that's starting to do this kind of stuff, and I think we're going to have Justin on in the future for an interview, which will be really cool to hear about more of his journey getting into this and what he sees as the future for games and events. So thank you to you and all your crew. You guys were awesome.
Yeah, Justin really knocked it out of the park, and I hadn't met Justin before this weekend, and it was a pleasure. I have a new friend, and his name's Justin. Great dude. My shout out goes to Tao Tao, who was just a ice in the veins, slit the throat killer all day, both days this weekend. And we had a great time with him at dinner, and he's just a great dude to get to know and watch him play. And I interviewed him for the LSS article after the Battle Hardened. Spoiler, he top 8'd. He's a monster. So great dude. Had a great time with him. So shout out to you, Tao Tao. Hopefully you're listening to the podcast.
Yeah, great Katsu main. And our last shout out, I just wanted to shout out Tyler Horsepool, who got a bit of vengeance and beat me round 1 at Road to Nats. So good on you.
Scores 1-1 though.
Totally. It was a tight game too. It went down 3-3. I was on Dromai, he was on Visperai, and yeah, just a really good game. I just love playing really good games.
Who doesn't?
That's so true. Who doesn't?
As we kind of preface here, the 4 of us were casters for the Battle Hardened on Saturday, and then Taylor and I played on Sunday, while Colin and Blake again casted the whole thing on Sunday, which was just a marathon of an achievement. So first of all, great job, you guys. I hope you had a really, really rewarding time doing that.
Great job to you, all of us.
Thank you.
I did have fun. Did you have fun, Taylor?
I did. It was great. It was an excellent time. Would do more commentary for games. So if you're looking for anybody, let me and Isaac know, and Colin, but not Blake.
Blake doesn't listen to the show, so
Oh yeah,
say what you want.
he doesn't listen to podcasts. Yeah, loser.
We love Blake. He's a great guy.
Anyway, so we got to see a lot of how the meta developed. What the field looked like, surprises, some like expected showings, and the performance of all these different heroes. So I think we're going to talk about what we saw in the meta breakdown a little bit in both events, and also in the top 8 of both events, and then we'll move into some of our experiences and hot takes and like what the game's looking like going forward.
Yep, sounds great.
So let's talk about the Battle Hardened.
Battle Hardened, we have our meta breakdown. As to be expected in a new meta, it was pretty open and diverse. It was really exciting to see the heroes people brought. Some of the standouts in the being more popular being Viserai, Dromai, Phi, and Prism, as well as Bravo and Briar kind of quickly or close behind them, really making up about half or more than of the total meta, which is really cool to see. We also had Lexi, Dorinthia, Dash, Oldhim, and Icelander all rounding it out, and even I think we had a couple Reinars and a Levia as well. We'll talk more about that later.
There's a Azalea floating around as well.
Yeah, one Azalea, a couple Kanos.
Yeah.
I think that was on Sunday, though.
No,
was it
on Saturday.
Saturday
Yep.
too? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Well, both the Kanos were matched up into Prism when I saw him one round or two, or round one or two.
That's why we didn't see them again after that.
So I was eyeballing them for the camera, but I did not have high hopes for their continued success, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Sorry, no shade. It's just rough.
Yeah, so we saw a lot of the new heroes. Like I said, lots of Dromai and Phi. Seems like Phi overall having a harder time than Dromai.
Yeah, so we did not see Phi this weekend at all. Just in, we're not talking about worldwide. Just this weekend in Southern California, we did not see Phi convert to top 8, right?
Nope.
Yeah, so there's 12.4% of the meta at the Battle Hardened, and none of them made top 8. But what is kind of, I think, interesting is it's like, depending on how you categorize Dromai, I think a lot of times it's kind of maybe leans more aggressive than it does control. Maybe it is a bit more of a mid-range deck, but overall, like the Viserai, Phi, Briar, we have just a lot of aggro out there, and that's kind of what was at the top tables throughout Swiss, right? Was we saw a lot of Phis and Viserais up there at the top tables, getting paired up against Prism and that sort of thing. And there's definitely kind of mixed results between Prism and the aggro decks, So it seems like things are a bit more even than I had anticipated with how these heroes break down.
Agreed. That was a big takeaway for me, was that the field was very aggressive as anticipated, but despite that fact, there were always Prisms at the top tables. So the resiliency of Prism and the fact that despite this theoretically being a hostile meta or her bad matchups, she like persevered and was always in the top tables, always in the top 8, performed really well, even though you would maybe expect her not to.
Some important context too for our meta here is, like some other places, I know this is true as well, but Prism is very popular. I know not everybody's locals have people that do that, but we have a lot of people who main Prism, love Prism, have played it even when she had a rough time in the Chain and Briar metas. So that's just kind of a constant level of expectation to have those players there. So that's not always the case, but I mean, it seems that we can say that Prism strong.
Yeah, I mean, historically, right, it was like Prism shouldn't be doing well in this metagame, and countrywide people are still playing her and still doing well. So I mean, Prism wins the Vegas Colin back in the Monarch meta. So it has been a good deck since day one. Period.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
I was also surprised that Phi did not perform, especially with the number of Prisms and Dromais out there. Because that's just like a very aggressive deck with a pretty good average output. And then it's also kind of a combo deck and sees like a 30 or 40 plus damage turn, within turn 4 or 5, which I thought would put it in a very good position. So I'm a little bit surprised and a bit unsure as to why it did not have a stronger showing. There's always variance and there's always matchups and all that. So maybe Phi is still quite good and just underperformed this weekend for some ulterior reason. Do you guys have any thoughts on Phi's underperformance, or maybe like why Viserai and Briar seem to be better just statistically?
I think one, Phi's just new. People are still learning it. They might not have had the time to practice all their matchups really well. I think another reason could be I saw a lot of Phi's playing each other, so they're just kind of cutting each other down. As we've said before, sometimes you have to gem your way through these events, and it really matters who you get paired up with. And then didn't get to see a lot of their games, so I'm not totally sure where they are struggling. But I imagine with as many Prisms and Viserais as there were, that seems like a bad matchup to me. I mean, Prism can just do. I know people have said, "Oh, like you can Phoenix Flame." Their auras or like whatever, there's a lot of things that Phi can do that go so wide to deal with Prism, but I don't know, Prism builds that board state and it can be very overwhelming and uncontrollable in just a couple turns. So, and they're willing to take a lot of damage to do that. And then on the other side, Viserai is just probably just as fast, maybe even faster than Phi, with a lot of the split damage that that they're not blocking. And if you're getting those revels or swarmings off, you're just pushing through tons of damage that they're not doing anything about.
what was the original question?
Just do you have any comments on like the underperformance of Phi,
Oh,
or
right.
like why Viserai and Briar seem to be the premier aggro decks, just based on the statistics
Right.
of this event?
Yeah, so one of the conversations I had with different Phi players throughout the weekend was people's opinions about what cards should or should not be added, equipment, weapons, just in the main 60, varies quite a bit, right? So not a ton is solved for that deck. It's still only like this was week 3, right, of Road to Nats, or of this new meta since Uprising, and that I think has a lot to do with it, right? Is that you are not sure what the optimal build is into the meta, and the meta is not solved. It's still like super wide open.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think we're starting to see kind of for sure that Viserai is maybe the top deck, right? Even though it doesn't win the Battle Hardened, it still is like extremely strong.
Yeah.
Right? And I would bet that we would have gotten more in the top 8, because like the whole top table was basically Viserai's, right? Viserai versus X,
Yeah.
and we only had 6 rounds, and a lot of X1s bubbled out.
Yep.
And I think if we had had a 7th round, we would have seen that smooth out a bit more, and maybe we get 3 Viserais in the top 8. Another thing we had mentioned all weekend that I think kind of contributes to maybe Phi's underperformance, or the fact that Dromai like gets into the top 8 but then doesn't convert a win, right? Is that specialists can prey in this type of meta, right? We talked about it on the stream that like there's 3 new heroes, 2 heroes have living legend out. Like it's unsure what the strongest deck is, how to attack the meta, etc. So if you have just been a day oneer on something like Rhinar, who goes X and 1 until the last round, or Alan on Bolton, who makes top 8, right? You can like, I mean, even Tao Tao on Katsu, right? If you're a specialist, you can do really well into this meta because you like know exactly what your lines are and how to play your deck, and the other person like maybe isn't as efficient either into playing you or just playing the deck in general.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very good point. Also, I would argue that Viscerai especially, Briar in some ways, but Viscerai especially is a bit more resilient than Fi. If you hit Fi with a Command and Conquer, it can really like make it hard on their turn, and they're a bit less productive with like 3-card hands. Whereas I think that Viscerai, has this massive, Mordred Revel combo turns, but also can be like quite threatening just playing, like red mauve into Shrill into Rosetta, just for 3 cards, and that's like also a very high damage turn. So I think that bit of, again, like against by a well-timed CNC or just like a bit of disruption can like really bring them down to their floor, whereas Viscerai is a bit harder to handle.
Yeah. And I think Briar remains the high rolly deck. It requires just drawing that combo out and going super wide and pushing crazy amounts of damage, which we did even see on stream a bit with a double channel Mount Heroic on there, which was nuts. And Viscerai too can be high rolly, but I think the deck is a little more balanced and can handle different situations. He can block out fully, build some rune chants, and pass an arsenal card and feel pretty good about that. Whereas other decks, you take that turn off and it's pretty bad. So I also think Viscerai is probably one of the top decks. I've been saying it for weeks. It's strong. It's still strong. It's just more aggressive now, which makes it, I think, better than it was before. Speaking of specialists and the top 8, looking at the top 8 for the Battle Hardened, I think 6 of the top 8 are you could call specialists in their class and hero. Well, more so hero, because one of them, the 7th, could be of the class, not the hero. So,
right.
Looking at the breakdown there, we had 2 Prisms, 2 Dromais, a Bolton, Katsu, Rhinar, and a Viscerai. So I just let that sink in. We had Rhinar and Bolton and a Katsu in the top 8 with the kind of more expected Prism player, and pretty exciting to see Dromai up there as well.
Yeah, Rhinar was the 2nd seed as well going into that. Very strong showing that day. Yeah. He also played into a bunch of Briars and like Rune Blades and aggro decks. He didn't like gem his way up.
Yep.
Playing like, I don't know, Dory or whatever he's looking for. It was very much just smashing through aggressive decks.
Yep.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, he was X and 1 at the end of the day. I think his only loss was to Prism in the last round, and we had him on stream earlier in the day. Just a great player. Graham is known to be a Rhinar player, shows up, does well, topped 8 at the So Calling 2 earlier, which is a local tournament, and great dude, solid player, so it's always fun to see him do well and play great brute games.
Heck yeah. Yeah, the top 8 was really cool, and it was really fun to see all of these like quote unquote dark horses, right?
Yeah.
In the top 8, and then they all lost.
Except Katsu.
Except for Tao Tao. Yeah, Tao Tao did really good, making it into the
quarterfinals. Semifinals, that's the one.
Right.
Sports.
So the Battle Hardened top 8 wound up being both Dromais lost, and Alan lost a pretty tough game to a friend of the show. Shout out to Andrew Rudin. Which is a cool dude. I also got to interview him for the LSS article, and he was just what a sweetie. And then in the finals, we had Brian Moss versus Nicholas Schneider. Shout out to Nicholas Schneider. Me and him go way back to Monarch Meta at Game Castle, and he was on Viserai then, and he's on Viserai now.
Yep.
Look at him, top 8, Battle Hardened.
Another main.
Totally.
Yep.
You're welcome, Nick.
Yeah. He won the first So Calling as well. So, Nick coming down here. I think he's local now. Not quite sure. He seems to be showing up in the Bay and down here, but a great Viserai player. So it was really cool to see him just have a great day on Saturday.
Yeah, totally. He's a great dude. Didn't show up at our meetup last night though, so maybe less of a great dude than I thought he was.
Might have been tired from all his slaughtering.
Yeah, totally. So in the championship, Brian Moss takes it out. He goes 9-0.
Yeah,
on
undefeated
the day.
on the day.
Yeah, real Prism rampage.
Yeah.
Yep.
According to him, though, he had some gem luck on his side, avoided most of his bad matchups all day, and then when he played Graham in the final round of Swiss, both of them had stated that they'd never lost to the other class before, and then they both,
somebody had to come out ahead.
Had the opposite happen there. So that was cool to see him play. He seemed like a very solid player. I haven't seen him around much before, but he seems like someone who's going to be showing up and doing pretty well at these events.
Yeah, totally. And you can check out the whole stream. It's on YouTube. I think, what do you search, Colin, to go find the stream and listen to us talk about all these games live, post live?
Either search for Odyssey Games channel, the store, who is our host, or I think if you just look for Battle Hardened LA, you should be able to find it.
I'll put it in the show notes too. I'll make a note right now to add the VODs.
A lot of great games on that stream.
Yeah, so I guess my last little talking point is, well, so walking around initially at the event, my dark horse kind of was Dory. There weren't that many Dorinthias, but there were a number of them, and Dorinthia is a lot stronger now with just one main edition, but the addition of a couple cards have made that deck very viable. And decks nowadays just kind of want to play out their combo and like spike harder than their opponent, and oftentimes are inflexible about which cards they can keep or use, and many decks don't block very well. So Dorinthia can really capitalize on that on top of her good defenses. So I think that she was trying to like carve her way up there, but underperformed, I would say, despite like really showing up to the tournament. So Dark Horse didn't pan out, but I think it's safe to say that Dory's back. And anybody that doesn't know her intricate attack patterns or how to play against her will definitely be punished at some point.
Yeah, I think any Dory players coming into this meta have a lot to learn, especially in the Dromai matchup of their sequencing, when to attack dragons, how to keep counters, just keeping that in mind throughout, because there still is times when their huge attacks can be covered up and they lose their counters, because with the new glistening steel blade, they can just rocket ship their counters, it seems.
Yeah.
So if they lose them, it can be pretty detrimental, and then all of a sudden they're not as strong as the other aggressive decks that are pumping out kind of more consistently high damage over their turn.
Yeah, totally. And I do like to note, I don't think we mentioned this at the beginning of our talk about the Battle Hardened, that there were just right around like 100 people at this, right? So it, was a very big event, not calling level, but, it's pretty large.
And a fairly competitive event as well. Most of the big names on the West Coast were probably there, up from San Diego, down from the Bay Area. So
Oliver Fye, Tyler Horsepool.
Like a lot of his team, who are also very well known in the area.
What's up, Zane?
Craig Pollock, formerly the Scourge of Pasadena. He's since lost that title, but he he did have a great showing in the next event, but we love Craig. He's a just staple Bravo Guardian player, that big sweetheart and just a really great community member. So always excited to see him do well. I think in the final game, it was pretty close for the most part. I think Nick made a pretty critical mistake in the end and kind of forgot what Merciful Retribution did, and ended up getting killed by that, which is always tricky. I think, too, he said he'd never played that many games in a day before, right. So he was pretty tired, and we all know how that can go. I was tired. I think they're just watching and streaming all day, even though we were all cycling. It's rough just to do, and being there under the pressure of trying to win a whole Battle Hardened, that's, he played great, and we're super stoked for him and his success there, even though he didn't get that final win.
Yeah, for sure. Should we move on to the Road to Nationals, or Isaac, let me guess, you have something else you want to say before we get there?
One more thing with Isaac.
So, well, let's talk about the new heroes a little bit. Like, Eastlander definitely showed up trying to combat the aggro decks, but did not convert, right?
Yeah.
Like, pretty much all the Eastlanders fell off. I saw one, at table 6 or 8 or something at one point, but that was just about it. Dromai really showed up. There were a lot of Dromais and definitely converted. There were some, like, fairly famous players and, people that have, I'm sure, put a lot of testing into the game or into Dromai specifically, doing quite well. And it seems kind of on par with Prism here, right? Like, despite maybe not being that strong into aggro, it's maybe fairly well-rounded. And while not everybody has a dialed list yet, perhaps, also not everybody knows how to play against it exactly.
Yeah.
But then there's also the flip side of this coin that Dromai's made it into the top 8 both days, but then nobody made it to the semifinals, which, there's a lot of data to interpret there, right? Like, probably a strong hero, probably surprising people, probably, like, can get dialed further, but also, just was unable to really convert.
Yeah, I think they had some tough matchups going into the top 8. Looking at the Battle Hardened, we had Brian Moss, who won, versus Adam Feifels, who is a resident just headhunter here. When I interviewed him, and when I asked, one of the questions was, how many Road to Nats and PQs have you top 8'd? He said, I don't know, a lot. And I know that that's true because I also don't know, because he's won a bunch as well. So he's a illusionist main for the most part. Played a lot of Prism, now on Dromai, really enjoying the deck. And I know that matchup it's really interesting and nuanced. I think Isaac and I practiced on Friday, and he slaughtered me like 35-0. And then we played again this morning, and I got that win out. It was much closer game. So I think there's a lot in that matchup that could go right or wrong for either side. And so that can be tough. And then on the other game, we had Tao Tao Chu versus Jarek, who's also a local, very good player. Shout out to Jarek, he's a great guy too. And I think Tao Tao just handled Dromais all day, just slaying dragons left and right. So he knew what to do there, and his deck is really interesting. I hope we get to see that deck list soon, and maybe we'll even talk to him about that in the future, because everybody there was just like, whoa, this is pretty cool. Nothing like real crazy, but the way he played it and what he had going on in there was really cool.
Yeah, and something to note too about a lot of these people we're talking about in the 90-day XP, they're in like the top 20, right? Andrew Ruden's number 4 in the US in XP, and Craig Pollock 17, Adam Feifels is 19th. Even who else did I see? John Zapata, who we saw in the Road to Nats top 8, is number 6, right? So there's just like a lot of heavy hitters down here in SoCal.
Totally.
Which is sick.
It's rough out here. All right, so should we talk about the Road to Nats? great time. We had our road to Nats. Same, but different. The biggest difference was that the Battle Bros entered the fray and were there to learn a lot about their new decks, which we'll talk about later. I was on stream with Blake, also being joined by Josh Myers, I believe. We had Blake Meyer and Josh Myers. I'm pretty sure that's right. And giving me a little bit of break because streaming for 20 hours over a weekend turns out to be really hard, and your brain goes quite soft after a while, and it's hard to keep up with everything going on. We still had a lot of fun. So anyways, breakdown. For the most part, pretty much the same. I think one of the big differences, Viserai bumped up, Icelander bumped down, and looks like a little adjustment with Bravo too, but Viserai coming in at 16%. This was a slightly smaller event, I think 67 people, which is still pretty big for a Road to Nationals. Dromai was at 13%, Prism 10, Briar was at 7, Phi again at 9, but still having a rough day. Dorinthia at 7%, so a slight uptick there. And then we had Bravo, some Lexi, Reinar, Katsu, Kano, although I'm not sure how many Katsus there were. But again, we'll talk about this soon, but Tao just slaying everybody like the cold ninja he is. So really, really great day. Again, most of the heavy hitters, if not all of them, showed up again. So fierce competition. I think it was really funny. We did on stream on Battle Hardened. We did some Who's That Guy spotlights of local players. And all three that we featured all lost their first round, and then didn't do really well that day. So we kind of had the curse of the stream curse on those guys. So we apologize for that. But we had Chris Ayali, who is one of Tyler Horsepool's team members, coming out of Riverside. Tyler Horsepool himself, and then Craig Pollock, who I mentioned before, who all not actually super local to us, but show up for big events and usually do really well. So, and they all ended up doing much better that day, except I think for Tyler, who didn't do as great as I think he was hoping, but still always a great competitor.
Yeah, I mean, really similar to the Battle Hardened. There's not a ton extra I have to say about the meta. Most of my insights are from my own learning experience, we'll call it, on the weekend. Isaac, do you have anything you want to input about the differences in meta, if any?
I think this does foreshadow a little bit, like we touched on before. I think that Viserai is definitely going to emerge as the top deck, right? Because it just has a stronger showing today, and I think people are just going to gravitate that as things kind of like even out here, right? Because you have to be resilient enough to survive a wide meta, right? So it's like, it's no longer just like, can I play into Starvo, Prism, and Viz? Starvo's over half the field, like whatever. Now it's like, you could play against Dorinthia, you could play against Lexi, you could play against Dromai, you could play against Islander. There's like, and there's a pretty good possibility that you will play one of those heroes instead of just playing against Prism round one, right? So you need to be a bit more flexible and a bit more resilient, and I think Viserai like really punches that ticket, as does Prism. I mean, of course, not trying to like understate Prism. She's always at the top there, but
she has a looming retirement though, so who knows how long she will be in the meta, and I think that opens up some interesting possibilities as well. But I mean, looking at how just the small changes in the meta, it does seem like Dromai, Viserai, and Prism are coming out as like strong contenders. It seems like Bravo can do well, especially for those who specialize in it, such as like Craig Pollock. But again, when the meta is so open, it's hard because there's too many matchups. You can't sideboard for everybody anymore, and that's becoming the thing. So figuring out what that meta is going to be before you get there is going to be key for any of these big events coming up.
Yeah. Well, so, yeah, it's like as we touched on, being more of a specialist and being more resilient, it seems to be the stronger thing. You can no longer just attack a meta, right? Like a really specific honed meta. Um, so we'll talk about a bit more of that a little later on. But first, do you want to talk about your experiences on day two, playing in the Road to Nats? And Colin, if you want to chime in, because we did not have a bird's eye view of that day. So if you want to chime in with your observations or what you thought, your hot takes, because you gathered a lot more information than we did. So Taylor, how was your Sunday?
Well, it wasn't so much a bird's eye view for sure. It was more like a worm's eye view, getting crushed by the birds or the boots of people walking upon me. So I played Icelander. So I'm sticking to my guns, which I talked about before Uprising came out, that I'm just going to freaking main this hero and we're going to see how far we can take it as a personal challenge. And so my big takeaway was I have a lot more to learn. It's a very challenging deck into such an open meta that we have, and kind of figuring out what the right 80 cards are has been pretty challenging. And then it's just like a punishing hero, right? Like you don't have a huge amount of uh, burst damage, and you really have to just be in the tank for the whole 50 minutes on what your opponent's doing. What are your odds for drawing certain key cards, playing to your outs, playing on their turn, playing on your turn. So mini games were like a lot closer until I made a mistake, and then I just got blown out and lose. But for the most part, I felt like I would be doing pretty well, and then there would be a critical point in one of my games where I'd be like, well, I'm unsure what they have in hand, etc. I think this is the safest play, and then it kind of winds up being a little bit of a miscalculation, and then all of a sudden, like something like Dawnblade has 3 counters on it, or it was Revel in hand, and they did have another blue, so I get hard punished and take 12 damage I can't really afford to take. So that was a little frustrating, but I for sure have learned quite a bit, and I'm excited to actually keep playing the deck. I kind of like all morning I've been talking to you guys about like these are the issues, these are the cards that sucked, how can we replace those, etc. So still trying to improve on it, and I'm not giving up yet. I kind of want to be like Alan, who just like everybody's like, yeah, he plays Bolton all the time, and he's super good, and if you don't know what's going on, you're gonna die, so that's kind of what we're aspiring to here, or at least getting close to that. So how about you, Isaac? What did you think? I have more thoughts, but I don't want to just like continue to monologue. So
Oh, sure.
I want to hear from you.
Yeah, so I did a similar thing, and I think so I played Dromai on Sunday because I like could not help myself. I'm very much in love with that deck right now. It is really, really fun to play. And I haven't done much testing with it yet, but this whole day offered like a lot of real world experience and an opportunity to learn a bunch of matchups and get some real reps on the deck, against different players. So I kind of took that opportunity and had a blast. I also did not do very well, but learned quite a bit about quite a lot of different matchups. And both of these heroes, you could argue if you've been a Prism main, you might have a little bit of a jump start on Dromai, but I think both these heroes are like quite unique. And for me, like starting from, it's been a long time since I like started from square one to learn a new class and a new hero and its mechanics. So that's going to take quite a lot of time, but I very much enjoy the deck and the play style of it. So I'm like really excited to, kind of take that journey, moving forward here.
So looking at your decks as you guys kind of brought them into this event, as we said, what the meta's wide open. It's hard to prepare for anything. Is there anything that you think you could focus on more to kind of either just ignore those bad matchups or expand your deck to be a little bit more resilient? Or like, what are some of the main challenges you felt in playing your new heroes, excuse me?
So because of the wide field, there are so many different matchups that you have to learn. Like while developing your own deck and your own piloting, every match you play is like likely a different hero on a different strategy. So it becomes just like a lot more work than just like as I'm playing into like 3 heroes and getting those dialed. How do you spike an event by getting those matchups dialed? Now it's like I really need to know like 10 different matchups, kind of through and through. So a lot of my mistakes on the day came from just like sideboarding wrong and having the wrong game plan, and it's like it could go a lot better with the same list, just if I, knew the nuances of that particular matchup. How do you feel about that, Taylor?
Yeah, I played a different hero every single round. My day started off with playing against Prism, one of the worst matchups I could have ever hoped for.
It's so bad.
Yeah, it's just awful. So for me, the Prism and Dromai matchup is like really, 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 really hard. And you just like don't have a lot of tools to combat what the other deck is doing, whereas they have a ton of stuff that is really punishing to you. Like Merciful makes it so like Frostbites
Yeah,
deal
Merciful Ode.
deal you damage. And you're like, well, this is like a huge part of my game plan. How am I supposed to play around this? I don't even have like really any attacks to like kill Merciful, so this sucks.
That's an absurd interaction. I
Yeah.
think.
And then like playing against Dromai, like they just have enough time to get out Mirage guys, and like now their dragons don't have Phantasm, and Chromai's out there, and you do freaking kill it, but it gains an action point, so then the turn continues to happen. And you just like in theory have these cards that like work. Like you have Succumb to Winter, where you can just like kill stuff, but it has to be frozen. And there aren't a lot of ways to freeze things, specifically allies. That isn't just shooting them with arcane damage or attacks. So I'm like unsure of how to make those matchups happen. And your like biggest blowouts are like your Frost Hex combo, right? So you like make a bunch of Frostbites, shoot them with some arcane damage, and then those Frostbites get multiplied by however many Frost Hexes you have. If you need me to walk you through that, listeners, just DM me. I'll be sure to show you what that is. But that takes so long to set up that you can't do it against the aggro decks. So then like the hard part is like, what is my game plan? Like, great, I gave you 4 Frostbites and I only took a bit of damage, but like I dealt you 3. And now your turn's over, and now we're going to start that over, So anyway, now I'm just vamping.
So if we're looking at a meta that might be somewhat dominated by Viserai, Prism, and Dromai, how do you guys feel about your decks into that meta?
Awful. Terrible. I should not have started this personal challenge. This is a fool's errand, and I regret my decisions.
I would argue that the jury's still out on whether Dromai will be a part of the meta. Like, certainly a lot of Dromai showed up, but we'll see if they ever convert. I mean, I know a couple have won, a couple road to Nats and stuff. I'm not, like, arguing that she won't be powerful, but we have yet to see. But I think, like, Prism and Briar and Viserai will definitely be pretty prominent. And that's a really good question, Colin, because that's kind of how I was approaching this tournament, right? Because you're kind of looking at aggro decks and Prism, and I didn't realize so much Dromai would show up, but like Illusionist or aggro decks. And so I'm like, my options are Lexi or Dromai, which I'm like pretty psyched to play. And each of those decks attacks the meta in a very different way, right? Like Lexi is super good against the aggro decks. And had I brought her on Sunday, I would have had Viscerai than Fi in my first 2 matchups. And it would have been an awesome, fortunate gem experience. But instead, I brought Dromai, and I got like 2 of my worst matchups. So, well, I don't hate Viscerai, but Fi is pretty rough. So anyway, I guess my point is, I guess the moral is I should probably be playing Viscerai into this meta. But just from my, I can attack the meta in 2 different ways and kind of hope to gem my way through. I had kind of like a frustrated tweet where I was like, how the fuck do you gem tournaments, Because I just showed up and chose the wrong thing and have really bad matchups instead of really good matchups.
Yeah.
But the bottom line for me, I was like pretty tired of playing Lexi into Prism like forever now, literally, not figuratively. And it's just like pretty demoralizing, and I don't enjoy that matchup. So I was like, well, it's nice to be able to compete with Prism for once. And, I'm just going to bring Dromai and hope that I play like the Mirror or, Viscerai or Prism, and like hopefully not see Fi or Viscerai. Unfortunately, or not Fi or, I guess Bravo is a pretty bad matchup. But anyway, I don't know. That was kind of my experience, and I feel like you just need a really resilient deck in this meta, and it's probably Viscerai because I just don't understand how people gem their way through tournaments.
Yeah,
I tried, and I didn't get it. I didn't do it.
It's like saying you need a little bit of luck, to succeed in life. It's just that's not something you manufacture other than hoping for the opportunity. But what I'm hearing is that it sounds like you have switched places. Taylor's on the unwinnable deck that he loves, and you are figuring out the nuances of a new perhaps powerful deck, and dealing with maybe a meta that favors you slightly more. So we have an interesting couple months in front of us, I think.
Totally. It's so fun to like actually compete with Prism, beat Prism.
And I'm
handily.
learning this for the first time.
Like I said, Prism strong.
Yeah.
So from my side of this event, I got to watch some of the games. I think I streamed just a little more than half the games. Took a little bit of break. I think I took a nap in the production booth for a second because, like I said, it was a long day. But some really great matches we had on stream, one being a Viscerai mirror. And I think if you're in this meta and playing Viscerai, you need to be prepared for this. And I think it's pretty nuanced and difficult because it's a combination of high rolly and then also some like really important choices. The match we had, Arya Howe and John Zapata, both locals, great players, great people, and it was really close, back and forth. And then at one point, John, it was like, I thought he was losing the game, and I was just like, oh man. And then he goes down to 1, and I was like, well, he's going to try something here, but I don't know if it's going to do it. Ends up popping his quill hands and just like presenting an obscene amount of arcane damage and getting the win there. So just seeing that happen, it was like really impressive. So I definitely suggest that something you check out on the stream. Some of the other stuff we did, we had a Dorinthia versus Dromai, which everybody I heard talking about this was like, oh, well, you just hit their dragons and you get counters and you win the game. And it's like, everybody in their little theories before a meta's actually taken shape are just so confident in them. And then, if it doesn't work out, you just like don't hear about it anymore. But, this was Ryan Aldridge and Adam Feifels, again, 2 locals. It was really great to see so many local people just like doing pretty well and having fun on stream. This one a little rough. Neither had played the matchup. And I think, like I was talking about before, the sequencing being really important on the Dorinthia side, making sure that you guarantee your counters are going to stay. to make sure you don't lose that tempo that you're building by generating those counters, which ended up happening to Ryan, and he went for a big glistening steel blade into Adam, and it got totally covered up. I think he blocked 10. I forget how he did it. Check it out on stream. Interesting matchup, and then he just lost all his counters, and then just has to start over, and Adam already had the board state, so he's just coming back at you pretty hard. So just lots of really fun games. I think, again, one of the highlights of the whole weekend for me, it was watching Tao Tao just like be a baller on Katsu. I kept saying it throughout the stream. I've never seen anybody activate Katsu's ability so many times in a game and do it without looking at his graveyard, grabbing exactly what he wanted. It was either, extending his Surging Strike combo line, which I think is pretty classic, but you'd also grab like combo finishers that weren't part of that combo he was doing, but it's just a strong attack to tack onto the end, combined with some even bigger than that, allowing him to draw cards and just keep pushing out crazy amounts of damage, sneaking in the mass triggers, making it difficult to cover up and prevent that from happening. And then, just really great to see that, because Katsu, I've grown to appreciate more. It can be kind of a linear deck, but it is always balancing that hero ability with what's in hand and what you can do. And I thought it was super cool to see him do it with such skill.
Yeah, indeed. For sure. Real highlight. So I got the shout out. Also, I forgot to shout out Samantha, who we met, who's Australian and is like the lead programmer on Fruit Ninja, and was here, and she was on stream a few times.
Yep.
Playing Briar. And we gave a playmat out to like kind of a really cool community member that we had met this weekend, and Samantha won our playmat. So shout out to Samantha.
Yeah,
awesome person who I did not know before this weekend,
Yeah.
and got to spend some time like talking to them over dinner and that stuff, and was just like really fun and positive and friendly and like genuinely interested in like life and the people in it and stuff. So it was awesome.
Totally. Yeah, she was on stream twice, both days, playing Briar. Some interesting notes there. She has Scour the Battlescape in her deck, which I'm still not totally sure of like the function of it, other than maybe to fix your hand and just like move through your deck to get through your get to your Channel Mount Heroics or something. But she definitely had some interesting things that I hadn't seen, and I thought was really cool. And she had a great time playing, even though I think she may have lost both times on stream, but was super positive, great energy, really nice to meet her for sure.
Definitely.
Going to the top 8.
Yeah, let's talk to the top 8 Road to Nats for sure. So in the Road to Nationals top 8s, we see Prism only gets one spot in the top 8, whereas we get 2 Viserais, again, 2 Dromais, a Katsu, a Briar, and Craig Pollock, formerly good player, now redeemed on Bravo.
Always good player, formerly Scourge. But I think there was only one Viserai Battle Hardened, but we did get the 2 Road to Nats top 8.
Right.
And then Prism, double top 8 for Andrew Rudin on the weekend. Pretty nuts. So congrats to him and his success.
double top 8 for Tao Tao also.
Of course, as we mentioned.
Yeah. So Isaac, what do you think about this top 8? This is a question, or like something interesting to maybe talk about. Do you think Road to Nationals top 8 is more indicative of the top decks, or do you think the Battle Hardened is closer to the percentages of the best decks?
I think that this is not a good sample, because everybody that's here for the weekend that played in the Battle Hardened also played in the Road to Nats. Normally, I would say a Battle Hardened is a much better sample of the meta, because it's a tournament that people travel for and try to perform at, whereas Road to Nats, while competitive, are oftentimes local scenes and made up of local metas. I just think that this one is a bit skewed because it was many of the same players.
Okay. Great.
I disagree entirely.
Wonderful. Please tell us why.
I think Dromai is real good. I think Prism's strong. And Viscerai is also real good. So I feel like this seems like where we're at in our meta. Maybe Katsu is not going to be in everyone, but I think we're going to see a similar makeup in these top 8s. Of course, it does depend on your local metas and what people are actually playing, but for me, these all seem really strong. I think Bravo has never been bad. He's just not been the best, but he's never been bad. And people like Craig who have stuck on Bravo, I mean, he switched to Starvo. We forgive him for that. But he also, he did some interesting stuff in Starvo. I liked watching him play. I thought it was much more interesting than some of the casino-style Starvo decks. But it's just a deck that can handle a lot of different things. It has some bad matchups, but so does everybody else, for the most part. And I think Briar continues to be a strong force and hard to deal with when they pump out, 30 damage on a turn and keep drawing cards. And then, like we've been talking about, Viscerai is good. I think Dromai players are going to be learning how to shore up some of these harder matchups. But I don't know. I feel like this is a pretty good representation for me.
Gotcha.
Of the future. Was that disagreeing with you? I don't know if I actually disagreed with you.
Not at all, but
Nice.
great points.
I was trying to be controversial.
One, well, you definitely piqued everybody's curiosity to, keep the attention. One thing I would like to note too is that, something that we've been kind of commiserating over is that with such a wide field and more heroes, sideboard space has gotten like really, really limited, and it's very difficult to like flex for different matchups. So I think some heroes that are kind of innately more resilient or have a proactive game plan that they can successfully enact into more heroes are like a bit more successful. I think there are some heroes out there that, in theory could be teched to play into, some matchup or some class or some meta, but with such a wide field, maybe there's just like not the room for them to be that flexible and then therefore suffer and are, kind of underpowered. Like I do think Lexi is good right now, but I know from like needing to flex Lexi, aggro into Oldhim and Prism and ice into aggro, your deck suffers on both sides kind of quite a lot. And, if the meta was like more, monochromatic or whatever, it would be a lot easier to like construct a deck to attack it.
Yeah. We were talking about that too with Icelander as well. She seems like a deck that, knowing what the meta is, you can really build your deck to handle that. But when it's so open, it has issues with its power level and things like that, so that it can't be as resilient, and that just makes it suffer into such a diverse meta. But I think we'll see. But maybe when we know what to expect, who you're going to go up against, for the most part, you can really balance your deck to focus on how you punish those decks specifically.
Yeah, indeed. I think that's like really true. And if we get Prism to Living Legend after this Road to Nationals season, there might be a bit more space for Icelander in the game, because now you will have to have some sort of like hard control counters to aggro. And, I think some people are going to say, well, Icelander's really good into aggro. I'm like, well, all they do is just side in their blues, and then that's all it takes to like continue to beat you. So it's like really hard. And if you're just like, Taylor, you're an idiot, well then freaking send me your list and tell me how to play it.
Yeah, you win your Battle Hardened with Icelander and then say something.
Yeah, and if it's not pummel Icelander, then talk to me.
We're talking about real wizards.
Yeah, at like a 12-person Road to Nats, like get out of here. Sorry, don't
Yeah, no
Sorry.
shame
Don't get
to
out
that
of here.
person.
Sorry. Don't.
Good for you. That is fun.
Totally. Don't
Maybe
be-
you should put Pursuit of Knowledge in your deck
Yeah.
too.
Don't be mad at me. Sorry.
All right,
Sorry.
so-
But like Icelander plays really well into the Guardians, the control decks, because they're like a little too slow, and you can just totally freeze them out. Like set up your triple Frost Hex, double Insidious Chill, and then make 7 Frostbites and deal 25 damage.
Profit.
Yeah, exactly. So if that winds up happening in the near future, you best know your boy over here is going to be wearing his blue witch hat with my ice cloak on or something. I don't know.
Nice.
Is that what Icelander wears? Oh, no hat,
No.
but cool ice cloak on.
All
He
right.
will be. He owns it. He's not speaking metaphorically.
Totally.
We'll send pictures.
We didn't get a spoiler this year or for Uprising, but we were prepared with costumes.
Oh yeah.
So
Wizards all around the place. We got robes. We got everything you need.
totally.
All right. So looking at the top 8, just kind of breaking down quarterfinals.
Oh, right.
We had Steve Lee. Also, shout out to Steve Lee. He is another powerhouse player. Does really well locally and has always just been really strong on whatever deck he plays. He changes it up pretty frequently, and I'm always impressed with the way in which he plays. Fortunately for him, on Dromai, he went up against the Dragon Slayer Tao Tao, so he got cut to pieces. So Tao Tao moved on to the semifinals. I now know what that's called.
I'm just, from you saying that, I'm just picturing Tao Tao standing with 2 Kadachis and like dragon heads
Oh yeah,
for a belt.
all around.
You
yeah,
know?
totally.
Walking into the fray.
Little baby
Oh,
dragon.
shit.
In our next matchup, we had Rihanna versus Craig. Rihanna, a local spiky kind of player, loves to play Briar and other like kind of high rolly decks, real aggressive. They unfortunately got handled by the formerly known Scourge of Pasadena, Craig, and so Craig moved on to go against Tao Tao. Then in our bottom bracket, Chris Ayali, another great player, went against John Ho. Chris on Dromai, John Ho, a Viserai specialist, and John Ho took it on that one. And then we had Andrew Rudin going against John Zapata, Prism versus Viserai, and I'm pretty sure...
John wins.
Yeah, John wins. That's right, because we had the Battle of the Johns.
Yeah, and we casted that. We got to call that game together, Colin. Do you not remember that?
I remember very little from this weekend. I'll be quite honest. It is a blur of so many flesh and blood games. But that's right. I do remember now. It was a good game. So Tao Tao goes against Craig, and John versus John. We were waiting to see which John won, but we know John did win that match as well.
This is the cutting edge reporting you were all here for.
Yeah. In the Viserai mirror, Viserai won.
Yeah. It's more fun that John won. And then we had Tao Tao and Craig on stream. That is a difficult matchup for Bravo, and Tao Tao did not make it any easier and just sliced and diced his way. Just every time, I think almost every single hand he had Surging Strike, and then he would get Whelming. It was just nuts. It was like, dude, I think he even bigger than that twice in a row. It was just like, oh, we're just gonna keep drawing cards, gonna keep playing things. It was pretty sweet. So Tao Tao moving on to the finals, doing one better than the day before. Just an awesome weekend for him. Really cool. And then, of course, John did win, but it was John Ho on Viserai. So our final was Tao Tao versus John, and it was probably one of the shortest finals I've ever seen. And they just, who's gonna block? Nobody. Although John Ho, I think, blocked a little bit more than I expected, but the resilient side of Viserai, you can block a little bit and still swing Amplify the Arknight with 6 rune chance to do 12 damage with no cards in hand. You're just like, cool. I'm gonna take this tempo off you right now.
Yeah, totally. I was playing a game against Thor Mike. Dude, shout out to Thor Mike, who flew over here to hang out and play some games and stuff.
And his brother Leon.
Yeah, and his brother Leon. Shout out to both of them. Great dudes. And we were like partway through our game before that match started, and I was like, oh, cool, I'll catch the second half of that. And then I look, and then I just hear cheering, and I was like, wait, what? It's over. I missed it. Oh,
I
well.
missed
Die, Thor Mike.
That match was probably 10 times faster than your Islander match was going.
Oh man. All day I'd look over and there would be like one or two tables still playing games, and it was always Taylor, and it was just like he was concentrating, he was working hard, and I'd check the scores and it would be real low. I'd be like, that's tough. It
Totally.
just-
55-minute match. Are you ready for your next 55-minute match?
Yeah,
no break.
my shortest match was against Kano, which I won, which was awesome.
nice.
But the other ones, I just chained 50-minute matches into one another. And it's just like, pick your stuff up, sideboard, play again. So it's like, old him players, I don't know how you have done it. It's so tough.
Yeah. Well, I think they have less to think about than you do.
No,
in
that's
their
true.
matches.
No shade on old him players. I also like old him.
Oh, I think we buried the lead there. John Ho did win in that super fast
Oh,
matchup.
yeah.
Viserai taking it down at the Road to Nationals. I believe John Ho already had his invitation, but he had not won the cold foils, so he was very stoked about the Icelander and Dromai cold foils he won, as well as I think he got money too, which is also nice. But congrats to John, super well deserved, and excited to see more of his playing in the future.
Totally. And it was a Bay Area finals, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Both of those from up north.
Yeah.
So
Both had a long
representing
drive.
for us. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Well, technically, so they're going to tweet at us that John Ho lives in Slow. So not
That's
technically the Bay Area. Right?
Central Coast, baby. He's
Yeah.
neutral.
So just I don't
Whatever.
I don't want to get the tweets.
No way. He's on our team and he's repping us.
Yeah.
That makes
That's
way
what
more
I'm getting
sense now that he shows up to a lot of our events because it's much closer than the Bay Area.
Yeah, he definitely does both. So
Well, fair enough.
yeah. Ha. We're going to take him though.
I
Northern
drafted him
California.
first.
No, I did.
I do want to shout out the power of even bigger than that. That card is insane. I guess because Katsu is less represented. It hasn't seen a ton of time in the spotlight, but just like Kadachiing and then instant speeding off your next attack, even bigger than that, you get to opt 3.
Mhm.
So you get to construct your next hand, right? Or send cards to the bottom. You're like shaping half of your next hand potentially or something like that. Fishing for your power cards, fishing for your combo cards, in addition to just replacing even bigger than that out of your hand with an attack, creating a quicken token.
Yeah.
Which I guess everybody knows what it does, but just adding on opt 3 and the deck filter onto that whole thing is like incredible. Take out your 3 weakest cards, put in even bigger than that, and now you have just a faster, more streamlined deck that you get to filter.
Yep.
It's just so powerful. It's such a good card in Katsu, and obviously it's performing for Tao Tao.
Yeah. The Quicken token, I think, being really important, fixing those hands where you have a combo card but not the rest of it, allowing you to just extend your turn. And the other thing I know Tao Tao mentioned as I think you said the best card in his deck was the Breeze Rider boots.
Yeah, so in the Battle Hardened, he said he played Prism 4 times and won all 4 times. And that Breeze Rider boots were a huge reason for that. Like, he can kind of tack on a like blue middling combo card for the mask trigger, and usually it doesn't get blocked because it doesn't have go again, and then it hits mask trigger, Breeze Rider boots trigger, Katsu fetch trigger. Thank you. I will deal more damage now.
Gives all your combo cards go again, and then he goes again.
Yeah, so then it kind of doesn't even really matter what you draw as long as it says combo or has go again. They have it. We're riding the breeze. Welcome to our signature segments. First up is Pick Pass Pray, sponsored by Fab Foundry. Head on over to on its Twitter page, link in the description of this episode, and comment, like, retweet, the etc. The rules for the giveaway, that is the sponsorship of this segment, are in that tweet. I think it's 4 packs of Uprising and 2 of the Uprising Blitz decks. your chance to win. So go check that out. So, gentlemen, it is a draft scenario. I'm going to give you 3 cards. You're going to pick one, pass one, and pray one comes back around. Colin, you get first pick. Are you ready?
I was born ready.
Hells yes. All right, first card is Ember Maw Centipie Red. Pitches for 1, costs 2, attacks for 8, defends for 3. It's in a Draconic Illusionist attack action. It has Phantasm, and it reads, when Ember Maw Centipie is destroyed, create an Ash token. So that's our first card. Second card, Aether Ice Vein Blue, cost 3, is an Elemental Wizard action, defends for 3. Has Ice Fusion, deals 3 arcane damage to any target. If Aether Ice Vein was fused and deals damage to a hero, they discard a card unless they pay 2 resources. Okay. Third and final card is Searing Touch, Draconic Attack Action. It's the red. They only come in red. So it pitches for 1, costs 1, defends for 3, attacks for 3, and it has Rupture. If Searing Touch is played as Chain Link 4 or higher, it has, when you attack with this, deal 2 damage to any target. These Iron Citadels and Machines of War will do little to slow the advances of the rebellion. So, Colin, which one are you going to pick, pass, and pray comes back around?
All right. It's almost too easy. But I think I'm going with the Ember Maw. I'm picking the Ember Maw. I think the fact that you can attack for almost half their life in one card is pretty strong in draft. So, and I also don't want to see that come back against me. So either way, if this is early in the draft, I can pick this. If I pivot into Dromai, I feel really good about that. If I don't, I feel good that I won't have to see this card. So there's not a lot of downside. It's a little expensive, but in draft, I feel like your blue count's probably higher than usual, at least compared to like a CC deck. So we're picking that. I am going to pass on Searing Touch. That was the right name, right?
Correct.
Is that the one? That's the one with the guy who's like holding the wall. This giant
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
That guy's cool, but I don't like his card. I don't think. I don't know. The Rupture ability isn't as good as some of the other ones, and it's not free. So it kind of can be a little bit awkward in the end, at the end of a chain, depending on the rest of your deck. So I'm just like not super into it. And then I'm going to pray that Ether Ice Vein comes back because it's a blue, which is good. It's also just a good card in Wizard in general. The hit effect is really good. So it's hitting all those things you want, and I think if it comes back around, it's probably a good sign that Icelander is open, and I'm gonna just jump right in there and just swim in the frozen expanse of wherever she's from. Isaac, what do you think?
I think it's just too easy when you're born this ready, you know? You know what I mean, Colin? Yeah, I completely agree. Aether Ice Vein Blue, I think, is really powerful, and it's a staple in the deck, but it's just not quite. It's not my favorite card because the 3 damage is, not quite the life exchange you're looking for here. Still love it, but I would pick the Ember Moss Centipie over it. So pick Centipie, pass Aether Ice Vein, or pray Aether Ice Vein, and pass on Searing Touch. Searing Touch, I mean, it's like unblockable damage and it's split and you can kill an ally, but it's just like it only gets up to a 1 for 5, which is just on par anyway with the requirement of Rupture, and the 1 cost makes it harder to pull off than Lava Burst. It's just not my favorite card. It'd probably be in the deck if it gets like wheeled to me, but not what I'm looking for here. Yeah, I guess that's about it.
Nice. Good job.
Thanks. Hey, you too. Smart guy.
Taylor.
Thank you, Colin. So I am going to pick Aether Icevein Blue. I think that card is really baller. It's really hard between that and the Cinnapai. The Cinnapai is very good, but I really kind of don't want to play Dromai unless that is my seat. The deck's just a little bit harder to pilot and get the value out of it, and Icelander can be really strong, especially with hit effects like Aether Icevein, and it's a blue that blocks for 3, so you're like already doing super good. And you know, in this scenario where you only have 3 cards to pick in pack 1, I'm cutting off Wizard from who I'm passing it to. Less applicable.
Denied.
But I hope that Cinnapai does wheel, because that is a really good card for Dromai, like definitely one of the ones you want. So if it's like the opposite of what you guys are choosing, if that wheels, then I can hop into Dromai if I haven't been able to pick up any more Ice Wizard staples. And then I'm going to pass on Searing Touch. Even though I think it's a little bit better than we give it credit for, just because it's a red that blocks for 3, which is pretty nice in the Draconic Heroes. But for all the reasons you guys stated, that a little bit harder to get its ability off, and it doesn't provide extra value outside of its Rupture Chain Link. So we're just going to pass on that.
Nice.
So there you go.
Well, you
All
heard
right.
it here first. Taylor was wrong. Isaac and I were right.
Well, we'll leave that up to the community at Fab
Hashtag
Foundry's
Taylor
Twitter.
was wrong.
Yeah, the Fab Foundry post will just be, is Taylor right or wrong?
Yeah. And you'll have to listen to the episode to find out. But you're already here, so congrats, you did it.
Yep, there you go. Cool.
One thing I will say about, I think in the Uprising draft format more than any other so far, um, your first pick is more contingent on the rest of the pack because they vary so wildly. So if there's a lot of strong Dromai cards in this pack and only one strong Islander card, I'd probably pick the Islander card because you're sending a pretty good signal, and vice versa also. So that like always factors in. But in this segment, we don't see the rest of the pack. Just giving that little caveat because that's like a huge, like I said, I think in this set even more than others, that's like a huge factor here.
Nice. Way to
Agreed.
undermine the whole segment.
Classic.
No,
Well,
it
thank
is
you.
true.
Thank you, everybody. Thank myself. Thank Dog, and enjoy this board game from the closet.
Here at the Attack Action Podcast, we love to play many board games, not just Flesh and Blood. And sometimes we like to share a game with you that we enjoy in order to. Oh man, this is the first time I messed up the segment. Hopefully, you will enjoy this game at home. This episode's board game from the closet is Colin's board game.
Yes. I'm so excited. I love this segment, and I love board games. So I have so many to talk about. But today, my board game from the closet is PAX Premier 2nd Edition. This is by Cole Worley. He's one of the few game designers I know by name and am a big fan. Shout out to Cole if you listen to the podcast. Just really insightful guy. If you ever want to read really cool posts about how someone goes about designing a game, check out his design diaries on Board Game Geek because they're super insightful. He talks about the history and he's like a history, I think he studied history, so he's like a history buff and really does a ton of research, does a lot of historical games that are very accurate and represent the conflicts and times in really interesting and thought-provoking ways. This one is no different. So we are in Afghanistan, I believe, in the 19th century. So lots of crazy stuff going on. We've got England and Russia trying to manipulate the Afghani people into, working with them to get hold of the area, the region, but it's super mountainous and, all this stuff going on. And then you have that Afghani people also exploiting the Russian and English people to, their own benefit. And everybody is kind of betraying each other and all this stuff. There's some real, I started reading one of the books he recommended that goes over this history. It's commonly referred to the Great Game, which really exposes the colonial mindset of the time where they were playing games with other countries and their resources and people. But this explores that idea very interestingly. Everybody starts the game with a loyalty. They can be loyal to Afghanistan, England, or Russia. But there's mechanics throughout the game where you can just switch that loyalty whenever you want, basically. You can betray somebody. You can kill an important person from one thing to become another, faction. So there's this kind of nebulous loyalty going on, which really characterizes the actual history of the time where different parties had their own goals and they would do what they had to do to achieve them. So it's a tableau building game. You buy cards from a market to build up your court. These are different characters and kind of regions and stuff like that. And then it's also kind of a dudes on a map game, but it's very simplified. I should also mention this game is beautiful. The map is a canvas map that you just roll up and you roll it out. It's screen printed. It's very kind of minimalist, and then you have a couple tokens that are used in multiple ways. So it's interesting how you use them and where you place them and what they represent. You're building roads. You're gathering tribes. You have armies, and you're moving them about. And the idea is to there's these certain points in the game where there is basically an uprising. Pretty on theme there.
All back.
Where everything gets shaken up, and they, depending on what is under whose control, and if anybody has more influence on the total area, throughout the total of the map, they can gain a bunch of victory points. But then everything's kind of wiped a little bit. So it's representing these kind of decades of times and generations on this larger scale timeline where there's these kind of upheaval events, and then there's kind of moments of peace and less activity following them. And then, in the end, it's a victory points game. You have the most victory points, you win. And it's just really intriguing. Everything about it is like, there's interesting decisions. You're buying cards from the market and then leaving those coins on the card. So if someone else goes to get that other card, they get those coins. It's got this closed economy. And everything about it, I just find really fascinating. I think I've only ever really played it solo. It's got a AI that's pretty interesting. But even then, I'm really fascinated by it and have enjoyed it a lot, and even have like the metal tokens and the dope laser cut box insert that is screen printed or something that looks amazing. So that is mine. PAX Premier 2nd edition. Check it out. It's from Whirligig Games. And if you like it, let me know.
Yeah, I'm looking at the photos of it now when you brought it up, because I've heard this game mentioned quite a few times, but I've never played it myself. And I was like, whoa, is the board really a piece of cloth? And you have confirmed that. And it's got this cool, looks like a piece of embroidered cloth with some mountains on it. Very cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Great game. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Isaac.
Thanks, Isaac.
I'm pretty excited to check this game out.
I know.
And you're welcome.
I wish we had time this weekend to play it, but we've just been too busy, playing Flesh and Blood nonstop.
That's true. I have been playing all day long. Basically, we've been steeped in Flesh and Blood since me and Isaac left on Thursday, and it's Monday.
Yeah, you said it earlier. We basically partied all weekend, and that's
Yeah.
why I'm so tired.
Yeah, totally. Till really late at night. Well, unless anybody has anything else they would like to talk about, I believe that is our episode.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us, Colin. Appreciate you as always, the backbone of our operation, etc. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at the Attack Action Podcast. On Twitter, we are at BattleBroTaylor and at BattleBroIsaac. Shoot us an email, theattackactionpodcast@gmail.com.
If you would like to support us, like and subscribe, shop for singles using our affiliate link, or support our Patreon for as little as $4 per month.